Hi there, how's everyone doing? Seems like we've got a couple of people starting to join us in the presentation. Just before we get started, a quick test. Can everyone hear me okay? Things. Hi everyone, how's everyone doing? Are we having a good week? Cool, thank you Charlie for letting us know. I've tried messing around with latency as well. I'm not sure how long the delay is. What I'll do, just in case it is quite bad, because I think using the normal settings, it can be up to 30 seconds. Is every couple of slides in the presentation, I'll just pause for a moment, allowing you all to catch up and ask any questions you'd like answered. Hello, Harriet. How you doing? Cool. So yeah, we'll just give it a couple of minutes for the rest of the cohort to filter in and join us. While we're waiting for them, I'll just quickly summarise what we will be talking about today. So, what we'll be going through is all the different types of organisations, so sizes of a company, type of business, as well as industries that we can go across to, hopefully giving everyone a slightly more informed view of the type of roles that are available to them when they graduate the boot camp. One of the really cool things about being a software developer is there's so many different types of companies that we can work for. So yeah, let's have a talk about some of those businesses and what the pros and cons are about working at them. Cool, thank you, Niels. I'm excited too. It's always good. So like I said, we'll take pauses every few slides to answer questions, and then we'll just have an informal Q&A at the end, just to answer any questions people might have more generally about employability, tech scene, and yeah, just what's going on in the world in light of the lockdown, and yeah, answering questions that people might have. Cool. Do we know how many people we're expecting in the lecture? I know we've got about 10, 11 currently in here. How many people do we have currently on front end? 13. Cool. Okay, so we have 13, 15. So I think we have pretty much everyone here then. I'm just going to give it another 30 seconds before we get started. 13 plus 2 tutors, maybe. Cool. I think tutors have probably seen this all before, so we won't wait for them. But yeah, cool. Looks like we've got pretty much everyone here. So just really quickly, for anyone that missed it when I was just quickly summarising the session before, what we're going to be talking about is the different types of opportunities available to us after the course. So the different industries we can go across to, types of developer roles, and also types of companies available to us. So startups, SMEs, large corporates, and what some of the pros and cons about working at those different organisations are. Cool. Hopefully, giving people the tools to start making an informed choice about the type of business they see themselves going to after the boot camp, but also, I suppose, getting people to start asking questions about what they're looking for out of that role, what they're passionate about, and helping to find an organisation that fits the bill. Cool. So yeah, one of the fantastic and cool things about working for a company such as Northcoders is we have a really diverse range of people joining us on the boot camp. There's no one type of person that makes a good programmer, and it's important that I think we reflect this diversity at the end of the course as well, with the roles available through us, both as hiring partners, but also I guess giving you the tools to go out and identify what types of companies you're interested in working in and reach out to them as well. Um, so yeah, there's no one type of company that is better than any other, and yeah, there's no just one type of business that we look to work with. So yeah, let's have a look and talk about what these different types of businesses are, and understand what it is we're looking for out of that first role. Cool. So we've just got some statistics here about the Manchester tech scene. So as of the Tech Nation 2020 report, which was released, I think probably 2 weeks before the lockdown first started, there's 1.64 million tech jobs in the UK. It is one of the fastest growing sectors, both nationally but also internationally. As you can see, it grew by 40% in the last 2 years. Now accounts for just under 10% of the national workforce. Um, Tech companies in the north attract investment at a faster rate than anywhere else in Europe. So we've noticed a lot of, as I'm sure we've probably all seen, tech businesses coming up to Manchester, but also investment in startups in this part of the world as well. Increasingly, startups and VCs are looking to invest in tech companies outside of the M25 bubble, and both Manchester and Leeds are really exciting places to not just set up a tech business, but also be working in the industry. Um, there's similar growth stats for Leeds as well, but Manchester now has 70,000 digital tech jobs and is Europe's fastest growing major tech cluster. Cool. I mean, that's obviously all well and good, but where do we fit into all of this? It can be a little bit, I don't know if overwhelming is the right word, but certainly daunting, just the range of companies. How do we go out and not just know which companies we want to speak to, but also the types of questions that we want to ask them before we do accept a role? How do we know that this company is going to be a great fit for us and it's going to help us continue that learning and personal development journey we started off on when we joined Northcoders? Cool. So we're going to start off talking about the broadly three categories of size of company that you can go across to work in. So the first one is obviously startup. Excuse me, the weather sounds terrible. I don't know if you can hear that, but yeah, really noisy. So first of all, startups. Second of all, SMEs or scale-ups, and finally, large corporates as well. So all of these businesses come with their own benefits and considerations before accepting a role at them. Let's have a quick look at what those are. Cool. So I do have some notes just on the other screen as well. Bear with us 1 second. There we go. Cool. So working at a startup is generally a business with less than, I think it's the general definition is somewhere between 10 to 20 employees, or has been going for less than 2 years. As I'm sure you can probably guess, with an organisation of this size or age, there is a much looser and less formal team structure. So this means the business is more likely to be much flatter, and as a result, you probably aren't going to have any sort of middle management. This means that when you work in these organisations, you will probably be reporting directly into perhaps the founder, owner, a director, or someone like a CTO, so a chief technology officer. So you'll be working very closely with the decision makers at that organisation, and you'll also have some input and decisions into what those the direction the organisation takes, both in terms of technologies but also products as well. If their major product is indeed software or a service. Cool. Yeah, as a result as well, it's likely you'll be performing multiple roles. So your day job will be a developer, but there may be a requirement or an expectation for you to also be able to design interfaces, user experiences, front ends, and there will be an expectation that you will be able to do perhaps some sort of marketing, so SEO, so search engine optimization, or stand in front of clients, stakeholders, and potential customers and pitch what your product or service is. You may be expected to go to events, trade shows after the lockdown, obviously, and talk about what it is your company does and what sets you apart from the competition. So yeah, you need to be comfortable and I suppose enjoy wearing multiple hats rather than just working strictly 9 to 5 writing code. As a developer, it's unlikely you'll just be working within one framework, tech, or language. Due to the size of the company, it's possible you'll be working either as a full stack developer or perhaps in more than one language, depending on what the stack is. As the company grows and the product refines and evolves, there will also be a potential for you to have to pick up new technologies as you go. It will be up to you to identify any training and learning resources that you need in order to do that. Your organisation might have account details for something like Pluralsight, Udemy, Front-End Masters, but similarly, if you go away and you identify a good platform, maybe a conference or events that you can attend in order to build the sort of person that really goes away and enjoys learning new things, bringing back fresh ideas and making something with them. A startup could be a great fit. It's a great place to test new ideas. There's not going to be a big body of legacy code, and you can come back and showcase what you've learned and how you think it's going to be a good fit to that organization. Um, you will also expect to be an advocate for the company. So you may be expected to participate in the wider development community, be it Manchester, Leeds, or even nationally, as a face of the organisation. So if you're looking to expand into new territories or markets, or perhaps expand the development team, you might be asked to attend events, meetups. Like I said, obviously when the lockdown ends. But with that being said, a lot of meetups these days are doing um, online conferences, and talk about some of the cool stuff that you've been doing in your role, and network. Um, as I mentioned, ownership of the project is a possibility. Working there as even a junior developer, you will also have some sort of stake in the direction both the development team and the business takes. It's much easier not just to bring new ideas into the business, but also define the culture. So if there's something you're really passionate about, say for example, women in tech, or working maybe with schools and encourage people maybe from disadvantaged backgrounds or who wouldn't normally be as represented in the tech industry, that's something that you will very much be welcome and encouraged to do. An important thing to always ask when interviewing or meeting startups is ask them what the runway is for an organisation. By that, we mean the amount of funding available to that business. Generally, startups within the first few years are a loss-making exercise. So as they obviously scale up, bring a new product to market and try and bring on more customers until they hit like a critical mass point, they won't be making a profit. So I think it's important before you accept a role with a startup, ask what that runway is and ask what the business plan is, how many customers they currently have, at what point will they be breaking even, and how do they intend to get to that point. As you mentioned, the existing culture will probably be quite basic or not very defined at this point. There will also be an expectation that any projects that you do or are assigned, you will need to get on with, provided with minimal support. There will be other developers or technical people there. It's very unlikely you'll be the first person through the door, and we typically wouldn't work directly with an organisation that is looking to make that very first hire. Just simply, we don't think it's a constructive environment for a junior developer to learn in. But similarly, there will also be times where maybe the CTO, head of development, is working on other projects, or working with the management team, or talking to clients or stakeholders. So there may be days where you are sort of expected to continue with your tasks with minimal supervision, and if you do get stuck, reach out to, be it somewhere like Stack Overflow, perhaps even the Northcoders community, and get that support by yourself. Startups will generally be greenfield projects. By that we mean there's very little established legacy code. So you bring in your own ideas and technologies. Let's have a look at some examples of startups that Northcoders work with. So some of you may know people that work at these businesses. So for example, SignUp, I believe, is e-learning, surveys, and an education platform. They're based in the platform office. That wasn't intentional. It was just pleasant coincidence. I said platform twice. And they've had several Northcoders graduates. They've done some really exciting stuff within the last couple of years and seen some exponential growth. Recently taken someone on. Aerocloud Systems provide airport management software. It's generally aimed at smaller to medium-sized airports, and it manages everything from air traffic control, payroll, staff, stock and inventory for shops, and again, doing some really exciting stuff in that field. I think they've recently brought on a load of European airports, so doing very well. Formismo is online forms, and I think data and insights brought in off the back of that. And Yappy is, well, you can see emojis yourself, something to do with pets. Cool. Before we move on to the next type of organization, do people have any questions about startups? Cool. Yeah, we actually have some here. I'll just flip back. Do you have some examples of startup companies? Yes. I will pause on each slide that we go through, so I will have examples of each of the companies as we work through. I encourage you to make a note of these companies and go away and just do a little bit of research. Now, have a look at what their websites are, what their products are, how they position themselves in the market, and maybe their unique selling points against maybe more established competition. And yeah, do a little bit of research on LinkedIn, have a look at what Northcoders graduates are currently working there and what their progression has been like. What are the indications to look out for when interviewing startups? For example, what kind of qualifications should you ask for their side? It's an interesting question. I mean, what I would generally sort of look at is rather than qualifications, the experience and perhaps similar projects that people involved in the business have done either at the same time or historically. There's no way or guarantee for success, but yeah, it's an interesting conversation to have, and I suppose pick the brains of the people who are in leadership positions in that organization. So why they decided to go to market with it, what their growth strategy is, and why what the unique selling point of their business is. So any the product or service that they provide, how's it different from other offers already out there, and yeah, where they see the business in 12 months, 18 months, 2 years. Have they been for a round of investment? Who else is involved with the business? Anything like that? Maybe major customers or clients that they currently have, stuff like that. But yeah, generally speaking, there's no right or wrong answer. I think it's just really about diving into the organization and getting an understanding of what their long-term strategy is. Cool. Does anyone else have any questions before we move on? I'll just give it 10, 15 seconds. Like I said, I will be taking pauses throughout the lecture to answer questions. So if I don't manage to get round to whatever question you asked, or perhaps you come up with something while I'm talking, feel free to drop it in the chat. It's much easier to get it answered that way rather than trying to remember it. And yeah, I can answer them as we go. Just quickly before we do continue, Charlie asks, do you think the scope, speed of progression in a startup is likely to be faster given increased exposure? It's tricky to say. It depends, I think, more on what type of person you are. If you're the sort of person that craves or yearns quite structured learning environment, it's probably not going to be the sort of place for you. But if you are very happy to go out and identify not just technologies and the development side of things that can be done, but also maybe come to the table with business ideas, you're keen to do business development and speak to organizations, yeah, there's a really good opportunity for progression, but that obviously is only as good as the growth of the business that you're working with. If you're the sort of person that is perhaps looking for a more defined training plan, so a set of materials and a curriculum and maybe some sort of skills matrix where you have to hit certain targets within, say, let's say, in 12 months' time, if you've done these following modules and you passed this certification, you'll be signed off, or you completed this book, you'll be signed off as an associate level developer or perhaps mid-level developer. Then yeah, I would suggest looking more at either an SME, which we'll get onto in a moment, or indeed a larger corporate. So it really depends on your motivations, what you want out of a role. If you're happy just writing really high quality code and really getting stuck into that, or maybe you want to wear lots of different hats. Yeah, it depends where you see yourself going and what progression looks like to you in a role. But yeah, good question. Cool. So yeah, moving on to SMEs, so small to medium enterprises and scale-ups, largely interchangeable terms. Let's have a quick look at some of the pros and cons that come with working in one of these businesses. Okay, so just bring my notes back up quickly. So yeah, when we get to SME size, we're looking maybe a company with up to or just over 50 employees. We start to have more structure, both as a whole organization, but also departmental as well. So this means there'll be a more formal chain of command within that business. It's likely you might report into a senior or lead developer, who in turn will work under either a CTO or head of development, perhaps even both. Um, Obviously, the benefit of that comes there is more management and there is more support in terms of regular meetings, reviews, and if you are having an issue, be it technical or otherwise, you always have that person that can support you with that. They'll still be experiencing some of the challenges of growth or working in a high growth company. So, roles, so things like HR and other processes might have to be defined as the organization grows. But they will be much more defined than they would be in a startup. As a result, there is still some greenfield code and projects to be worked on, but you will be working with some legacy code. So there will be either existing services or applications that your company provides that you'll be working with, or perhaps third-party services. So you might be signed up with other organizations that might provide things like security, authentication, data, and you might have to work with some older technologies, languages, or even frameworks to in order to use these additional services. So yeah, it's an interesting mix of potential for growth for bringing on board new ideas, but also working within the framework of an existing product. Um, as we mentioned, that structure in the business is going to be very departmental. So the organization will probably be divided something up along the lines of sales and support, marketing, operations. So making sure all the other teams have what they need and they're able to work to the best of their ability. You'll probably start having some sort of HR and recruitment arm to the business, and tech will be its own department within the organization. So the great thing about that is if you're not the sort of person that wants to wants to be part of the sales process with potential clients, or don't really have a passion for marketing, then yeah, you won't be asked or expected to do that. You may, depending on the size of organisation and what the product is, still be expected to do a little bit of design, especially if you are working in a front end role. But more often than not, there will be people either within your organisation or perhaps with a company you work with, such as an agency, which we'll look at shortly, who is brought in to provide specialist skills around that. It is possible that in addition to being a developer, you may be expected to do stuff like database maintenance. You may be expected to do some DevOps, so things like architecture, or perhaps even support to clients. But generally speaking, the larger the organization we get, the more focused the work that you do will be. As a result, it's likely that you will perhaps just be a front-end developer, a back-end developer, or perhaps specialize even in just one language or framework. So it's not uncommon at this level to have roles such as Java developer, React developer, like we said, front-end, back-end. These roles start becoming a little bit more defined. Cool. And typically the training and onboarding process will be more formal as well. There will probably be some sort of guidance for your line manager around what this looks like, and there will be some level of learning materials to familiarize yourself with the tech stack and the languages and services that business use. So very often businesses maybe will get you started the first couple of weeks doing stuff like testing, bug fixing, working on maybe an older version of the application pulled down from GitHub, and familiarizing you in a slightly safer environment, perhaps with some e-learning materials before you get dropped in the deep end. Cool. So having a quick look at some of the organizations Northcoders work with that identify as SMEs or startups. We have First Stop Group, which I believe is a range of insurance products for everything, but for between cars, houses. I'm not sure what the ring means. Maybe jewelry. I don't know. And Access Pay, who are a fintech based in the Tower, just above the Arndale. They've hired a lot of Northcoders graduates. I think most of their developers indeed are Northcoders grads. Same goes for Vendi, so I believe they're insurance and financing products for a range of devices and industries. Peak, which is business intelligence, so data and analytics. Spare Room, I'm sure most of us have heard of Spare Room. I know I certainly used Spare Room when I first came up to Manchester to do the Northcoders course and foreign currencies. So yeah, you're working within a bigger team of developers. You know, there'll be people that have been there for a little bit longer that are able to take you under your wing and you learn from. But with obviously those more people, with more people in that business, and obviously a more defined tech stack, the trade-off is there is going to be more legacy code that you work with. Cool. So just before we move on to the next slide, we've got any questions? Boom, boom, boom. Just give it a few seconds to catch up. Cool. Okay, I'll just give it a few more seconds and then we'll move on. Okay, as I mentioned, if people do have questions and I don't get around to answering them just now, I'll revisit the chat throughout the presentation, and yeah, I'll be happy to answer those questions at that point. Cool. Okay, so moving on to the final type of or size of business, we're talking large corporates at this point. So some of the benefits and perhaps drawbacks of working at a large corporate are as follows. At this level, we have a far more defined role and responsibility. There'll typically be very specific jobs, salary bands, departments that you'll be recruited into. So a very formal job spec, but also training that comes with that. So there'll be a really comprehensive training plan when you first are onboarded. But also, as you stay with that business, there'll be really clear targets laid out for you, as well as provide materials and support in order to hit those. So someone will probably sit down with you. That these companies often have a learning and development manager inside them and go through exactly what it is you need to learn, at what rate you'll be expected to learn those things, and the I suppose reward and remuneration that you might get for doing that. So this is where we expect you to be within 18 months. This is the pay grade. A lot of these companies will work within pay grades and bands, and these are some of the support that we'll give you to go to these things. So very often, as well as access to e-learning platforms such as we spoke about Pluralsight, Udemy, there are many others available. They will probably have their own learning resources and materials. Companies of this size will very often also have interdepartmental meetups where maybe people present projects that they've been working on, talk about technologies, frameworks that they're passionate about, and knowledge share between different departments. And there'll generally be a training budget. So if you want to go to conferences, events, or just buy resources to help you with your training as well, that there will be opportunities to do that. When you get to this sort of size of company as well, it will be very hierarchical, the structure, and also there'll be a very clear chain of command. So not quite as flat as the two types of businesses we looked at previously. You'll typically work within a very clear squad. There may be several squads working under a lead developer. So you maybe have juniors, and for every 2 or 3 juniors, you have maybe 1 or 2 mid-level developers who will then have one senior developer managing each of those squads, who will then report into a lead developer or maybe head of department. So it's not uncommon at this level as well to have maybe a head of either a certain application, product, or service, who will all report into someone like a CTO, a technical director, someone like that. Cool. With that, obviously, comes a really clear promotion path. So if you choose to stay with this business, there will be a really clear progression for you through that business. So yeah, obviously having understanding, really thorough understanding both inside and out of the technologies and services that business uses, you would hope, and a lot of businesses have got a lot better at this within the last few years of promoting internally. So understanding of the customer and the product is really valuable. It takes time to obviously instill that in new employees. They generally will have a clear um, like we mentioned before, if you hit these milestones and you complete these training resources, you can expect within 12 months, 2 years, 3 years to be at these levels. Very often there'll be multiple products and projects ongoing, and different departments will have ownership and responsibility of these. A lot of larger corporates, Barclays as an example, when you first onboard that business, you'll have opportunity to, sorry, just itchy nose. Oh, there we go. You'll have opportunity to move around these different departments and teams and get a feel for how all these things work together, and perhaps even have some say in which department you see yourself going in. Maybe if you're passionate about a specific product, group of customers, or technologies, you can have some say in which business area you end up working in. Oh, sorry, that nose itch has not gone away. So much better, thank you. Um, cool. Like I said, very often they'll have their own internal training materials and perhaps even academies where, yeah, like I said, there'll be a learning and development manager who'll be responsible for that. And yeah, it might even be quite similar to what you've done at Northcoders, but in a different language, framework, technology, that sort of thing. Cool. So moving on to some of the examples of businesses that we work with who are large corporates. We've got a lot of familiar names on here. We've got AO, who have been doing quite well recently. I've been told they've sold out of fridges and freezers until some point very late in the year. I feel sorry for anyone who has a broken fridge or freezer at this time of year. Do not envy you. Obviously, BBC, Money Supermarket, Barclays, all of these are businesses with offices in Manchester that Northcoders graduates have indeed gone across to work at. Jaguar Land Rover, some of you may have seen them present within the last couple of months to Northcoders students. Auto Trader, and all of these businesses as well, going back to what we were saying much earlier about culture, have really a clearly defined culture. They'll generally have people responsible for managing this and ensuring that is maintained and is consistent across the entire business. And yeah, I really encourage, not just for your own benefit in terms of identifying a role that's going to be a good fit, get a good fit for you, but also when you interview these companies, they will expect you to be to some degree familiar with that culture and the brand values. And you may get quizzed on these things. I know Barclays, there was a big part of their interview process. So yeah, it's well worth looking at. Are there any corporates based in Leeds? Yes. So a few of our graduates have gone on to work at Sky. There's also the Stars Group. You've got the likes of Financial Force out in, I forget where it is. It's somewhere near, it's Harrogate, I think. I think Lloyd's have quite large offices. Obviously, Channel 4 are moving up to Leeds and are hiring software developers. And what else are there? It escapes me. I will have a look at the Leeds focus slides. Unfortunately, I can't have them both up at the same time, and get back to you on that. Let me just make a note. But yeah, good question, Jodie. But yeah, I mean, like we said, these are all household names. A lot of these companies as well will also have meetups, events that they run, as much, I guess, a PR exercise in terms of increasing awareness about the technologies and projects that they have currently going on, but also in terms of recruiting people as well. Generally speaking, if you see a company that is hosting or running an event, there's a very good chance that they're looking to hire developers. So yeah, it's well worth spending a bit of time. I recommend signing up to things like Meetup, Eventbrite. Look at who's doing what, who's speaking at things, and I can always guarantee if you make a short list of all those companies and then look on there corporate websites, at the careers portals, there will be stuff on there. So yeah, and reach out to these people as well. The reason they're putting themselves out there to speak at these events is to network with the wider community. So yeah, if you see something, it's very unlikely to be in person at the moment, but yeah, if you log into a webinar, watch someone talking, and you really appreciate what they talk about, just drop a message, say thank you, that you enjoyed it, and start building out your network of people. It's so important in this industry, and yeah, it's well worth the investment in time, and you'll probably learn some really interesting things and meet some cool people too. Great. Yeah, so like I was saying with the previous companies, I encourage you just to make a little note of these businesses, have a look at their corporate sites, have a look at their careers portals. We spoke about culture, brand values, that sort of stuff as well. And yeah, go out, see what Northcoders graduates have been working at these companies, and what their progression has been. And reach out to these people as well. We um, always trying to encourage and foster the Northcoders community. And yeah, I'm sure if you reach out to these people, they'll be happy to tell you about their experiences. Cool. So moving on to the next part of the presentation, we're going to talk about the three different types of development companies you can work at. And what I mean by this is what we call internal development teams. These are all the companies we've seen up to now. Companies where they have their own developers working on in-house services and products for their customers. They work directly with the end user. But we also have agencies and consultancies where development work might get outsourced for various reasons. We'll look into them in a moment. And yeah, these will often be specialized within maybe a certain technology, way of working, and yeah, can provide interesting opportunities to people who want to work with a variety of businesses, maybe technologies, and appreciate a sort of a fast pace and what's the word I'm looking for here? I suppose the opportunity to try lots of different work with lots of different businesses and build a really broad picture of the broader development industry, be it Manchester, Leeds, or perhaps even national. Cool. So starting with agencies, agencies will, as we mentioned, work with other typically tech businesses, but not always. Often, if you're a business whose primary product isn't software, say for example you are, let's say, e-commerce brand, it's unlikely. If your main product is, let's say, clothes, right? In Manchester, there's a lot of e-commerce companies that sell clothes here. Your main product is those clothes and getting people to want to buy those clothes. It isn't the website itself. So a lot of these companies will either have no development team or perhaps even just a skeleton team, just to make sure things keep ticking along, lead projects when they do bring agencies on to bring updates for them, and yeah, they will outsource to other businesses who specialize in that. So as a result, in Manchester, following this example, we have a lot of agencies that specialize in e-commerce and related technologies, things like PHP, WordPress, Shopify, that sort of stuff, because these are really easy services and tools to use as someone that's maybe non-technical. It may be if you're a merchandiser or a buyer to upload new products to them. Cool. So you may be working exclusively as a development team for that organization, but very often as well, you'll be working with other developers. Another reason the companies may choose to use agencies is in order to hit a deadline, or maybe the specific product or service that they're working on, they don't have the expertise or specialty in-house. So you might have a development team that's really good at front-end development, but perhaps you're bringing on board a completely new product, and as a result, you need someone to architect the whole back end. So you need someone that's really confident with setting up AWS and all the different services available. So certainly when I look at things like AWS, the most daunting part is, well, where do you start? You've got well over 100 services. How do we know which is the right ones? Instead of spending weeks or months learning it from scratch, why not bring in people who work with these technologies and services every single day to get you started with that with that skeleton that you can then work on. One of the cool things about working with an agency is there's obviously opportunities to work for a range of different clients uh, on varying products and on different campaigns. So sometimes you might not just be bought in on a short term to work on a specific product or delivering something for a certain release, but you may provide long term support for any technology or service that you've helped them bring on board. But as you mentioned, you may be working in conjunction with the in-house tech team, or you might be the tech team in your agency. Um, you will probably be expected to do some sort of client engagement, so either presentations. At the minimum, it will probably be stand-ups with the development team or stakeholders in the organisation to let them know what you're doing, what point you're currently at, what's gone well, what maybe could have gone better, any sort of pain points or things that you've had to change from the initial brief, and work closely with them to keep them up to speed with what's going on. In an agency, obviously, the pace of work is very fast. With the variety comes a certain expectation to be able to pick things up quickly. Generally speaking, as well, when a company does outsource work to an agency, there is an expectation that you are specialists in your field. So we mentioned something like cloud services. It could be also a specific technology or way of working. You might specialize in, let's say, data, or you might specialize in full service digital. So you do front end, you do marketing, you do SEO, you manage digital campaigns, that sort of stuff. So going back to my point, there is an expectation when these businesses take your company on and they're paying a daily, weekly, monthly rate, that you will hit the ground running. So there may be an expectation for you to pick up technologies and concepts very quickly. It is possible that you may have to do some sort of learning and studying in your own time, and the same goes for coming to the end of a project. If your company has to hit, try again. If your company has to hit a certain deadline, there may be some what is called crunch in the industry, where you are expected to work late nights and work quite hard to hit a certain deadline. But similarly, there may also be times as well where things are really relaxed. I know people that work in agencies that have things like ping pong tables, arcade machines, that sort of stuff. So with the bad comes the good. Be bad being having not a lot of work or lots of work. Obviously, depends on the person. But yeah, it's not quite as steady a flow. So yeah, like I said, lots of opportunities to try different things, but perhaps not the same sort of level of support and as you would get working in an in-house development team. Cool. So looking at some examples of companies that have hired agencies that have hired Northcoders graduates. We have Degree 53 who specialise in, I think it's gaming. I think a lot of their initial client base was gambling as well. I think they were actually spun off of one of the big gambling houses based in Manchester. And also really specialised in mobile. I think they've got a really strong React team there as well. It's very highly regarded. Padme specialise in mobile. They're based out in Salford. They've taken on a lot of Northcoders graduates. So we have a really good relationship with them. Silverchips did specialise in C#.net. However, some of the Northcoders graduates that have gone across there have bought other technologies in-house. They've done a lot more stuff with React and front end based these days as well, and really broadened the spectrum of technologies that they work with. In Technica is automation and machine learning. I'm not too sure what Isotoma are. Again, I'm going to leave this slide on the screen for a second. I encourage you to have a quick look at all of these businesses. I know all of them have very active online presence on things like LinkedIn, Twitter, that sort of stuff, and also have a look at their corporate sites as well. Cool. A lot of them will talk about the range of clients that they work with as well. So I'll give you a really good idea for the variety and type of work that they take on as well. Each one of them have unique selling points. So they will position themselves with that and will give you an idea of the type of work that you might do with these agencies. Cool. Does anyone have any questions before we move on to consultancies? Some similarities, but we'll talk about what the differences are and what some of the expectations are in those businesses. Cool. Just give it a few seconds and I'll move on. Cool. Okay, where we are coming up to nearly 4, so I'm going to move on. Last but certainly not least, we have consultancies. So similar, they fill a similar gap in the market to agencies, but in addition to just coming in and doing the technical work, just to say the internship for one of them, you provide a consultative approach. So you have a domain area of expertise that you'll come in and share with that business. So instead of just coming in and help and working in a really agile fashion, you'll probably come in and maybe do some training or support, help restructure that business for them to be more agile going forwards as well. It's typically more of a long-term relationship than a lot of agencies will have. You may be looking at large-term projects that are often scheduled to potentially go on for years. There'll typically be key points that you hit in that relationship, and you'll have a reevaluation of the relationship. You know, that they may even roll people on or off the contract at those points as they need more or fewer people. Yeah, as it says here, often it will be large-scale digital transformation projects that you're part of. So you'll be working not just with several other developers in that consultancy, but also with a development team or perhaps non-technical people in that organization. It doesn't necessarily have to be on site. It really depends on the consultancy. Some consultancies will insist that all their developers work on site a minimum number of days a week with that company. There may be some travel expected to do that. But similarly, some consultancies will have everyone working on site in their office. It really depends on the business and how they pitch their services to the client. If it is a company that you work on site, there could be lots of travel expected of you. It could be potentially anywhere in the UK, or perhaps even further afield, depending on the business. Always something worth asking if you go speak to consultancies. Often you might be asked to swap projects. Like we said, you know, it's not unusual for people to roll on or off of projects when when you hit certain milestones with your organisation, or perhaps your services are needed in another business or another client. And there will be some degree of client-facing presentations, talks, stand-ups that you'll be doing with those businesses. So if you're the sort of person that would rather just sort of crack on and just get your head down coding, yeah, you'll be doing a lot more than just that in this type of organisation. Or there'll be people certainly in your team that does. Again, it depends on the organisation, but there will be someone in your development team who will be that point of contact with their development team or the stakeholders to answer their questions. Cool. And make sure the project's on track, and the goals that you set out to deliver are going to happen. Cool. So again, giving you examples of some of the consultancies based in Leeds and Manchester. Again, just like the agencies, all of these companies have unique selling points. So Equal Experts, my understanding is, I think everyone who works there has 5+ years of experience. ThoughtWorks is digital transformation, and digital specialise in .NET, but also will take on projects in other languages. But yeah, cool. Again, really encourage you to go away, have a look at some of these businesses, learn a little bit about them, and yeah, you know, reach out to Northcoders graduates currently working at these businesses. Cool. That covers all of the slides. Do people have questions about any of these businesses? Perhaps just the tech industry more in general? Happy to spend a few minutes answering them. Obviously, I'm available on Slack as well. You know, if people do have any sort of questions that they would either ask not in front of the entire group, it might be slightly more sensitive, or perhaps just I can't think of a question at this point. It comes to them later. Feel free to drop me a message. I'll be happy to talk to people and yeah, get to know them a little bit more. Cool. So yeah, what do people like to know? Is it a waste of our Northcoders learning to go into software testing? Not necessarily. Over the last few years, software testing and development, the lines have very much blurred. A lot of businesses will look at automating a lot more testing and will have perhaps as part of their either continuous integration or continuous development pipeline automated testing that needs to be done. So any code that gets uploaded by a developer will need to pass a series of tests before it gets merged back in with the master branch and then pushed up to wherever it's hosted. So you'll be working very closely with developers, and yeah, there'll be a lot of coding and responsibility that you'll have as a developer. That is almost the final gate that code needs to pass through. It's a big part of agile is being able to move quickly and release and have new small releases gradually on a very regular basis. So it's possible that you'll be doing a lot of testing, and you'll be closely involved in planning out sprints and projects as well. So it depends on the business. I do encourage you that if you are looking at testing roles, to ask sort of questions about what the progression looks like, what technologies that they use are, and what the split is between automation testing and manual testing. But yeah, good question. How much does the current situation affect our employment chances? Has the market dried significantly? Things have slowed. It really changes every single week, to be honest with you, Luke. We've had businesses that have come back and told us they're not hiring until June, July, and then they've come back and said, oh, actually, we want to take on 4 people in the next 2 weeks. Can you make that happen? It's like, well, nice to know that a little bit sooner. Companies do seem to be offering people. Some businesses are saying that the start date is going to be after the lockdown. So that is something to bear in mind when speaking to companies, and they do offer. Or they're asking people to join on a freelance or fixed term contract basis, and then look at taking people on in a more permanent position after the lockdown when they can have a better onboarding process with them. I think companies are realizing though that even after the lockdown gets relaxed, it's not going to just disappear completely. So they are having to rethink what their recruitment strategy is. I can tell you, speaking to internal recruiters and HR people, their plans seem to be changing every single week. So it's really hard to say. But yeah, people are still getting hired. It is slightly slower. The biggest pain point we've had is people just being hard to get in touch with. I appreciate people are probably at home. They might have kids, family that they're currently having to look after. But there's been a few roles recently that we've had that unfortunately some people have just missed out on being sent across because they've just simply not been too slow and not been checking Slack, the job board, that sort of stuff regularly enough. It's not just obviously Northcoders graduates that are feeling the pain and perhaps apprehension that comes with the lockdown, but there's other boot camps, there's university graduates who you are competing against. So I can't emphasize enough, if you do see roles that you are interested in applying for, be regularly checking Slack, be regularly checking the job board, and let us know as soon as you see that. And keep your CV up to date as well. If you're working on projects in your own time, it's so important that you're showing that you're working on these projects, but that also you are regularly updating your GitHub profile with them as well. So it shows you're doing stuff, and it means as well, if you do come across a role, instead of having to take 24 hours to get everything updated and you'll see it across, you can get it across like that. Not just Northcoders companies, but any roles that you see out there. Do salaries for junior developers vary much across the different business types? The average salary a Northcoders graduate goes across to is around 25,000. It does vary a little bit. Generally speaking, fintechs will probably offer a little bit higher. Consultancies will probably offer a little bit higher as well, because they're probably looking for maybe more commercial or business experience. There's no definitive rule, but yeah, there is some fluctuation, and obviously in areas where it's more competitive for developers, that you will generally see slightly higher wages, so things like city centres. Cool. Bear with me just 1 second, please. Cool. Hey Chris, I'm just wrapping up the presentation now. I'll do the second tech scene workshop. Yeah, perfect. Cheers, mate. Cheers. Oh, hey everyone. Cool. So yeah, is software testing still seen as a valuable, cool, whatever than development. I would say testing historically did have a stigma. But yeah, as things like CI/CD pipelines, automation has become more and more popular, it is more, in vogue is the right way of saying it. But similarly, with perhaps a technology that has some or a type of role that does come with baggage, typically you will see higher salaries as well. Often technologies frameworks that perhaps aren't quite as popular will also command higher salaries as well. Um, but yeah, obviously something to bear in mind as well is progression might not be the same. Developments in the language or the tools that you use might not be as fast. So and just the number of roles available. There's really helpful online tools you can look at, like things like Glassdoor, where it will tell you the total number of roles available in a certain region. So you can compare things like Java developer, JavaScript developer, developer and test, DevOps, architect, that sort of stuff, and see not a architect designs houses, but designs sort of backends and services, and see how many roles in a certain geographical area have been either advertised live or within the last 12 months. Joseph asks, do you know how long it will be average time-wise until Northcoders taking their first ticket, or does this depend on the type of company you choose? By ticket, do you mean off something like a Kanban board? It really depends on the business. Generally speaking, if you're going into probably a startup or an SME, there will be an expectation that you will you could be working on production code from day one. It depends on the business. You might find if it's a very large code base or there's a lot of legacy code that they deal with, they might give you a little bit more time to familiarize yourself with the tech stack and the code that you're working with. Similarly, some companies as well, they might start you off talking about testers. They might start you off with writing tests and then working maybe as support with clients before you familiarize yourself to a certain level, where you'll then be working on new releases and tickets for that. But yeah, Charlie asks, is there a Northcoders job board? Yes, there is. So we use a Trello board where we host roles available directly with our hiring partners. It is in no way exhaustive, as I'm sure you can probably imagine with a lot of the companies that we spoke about on the this slide. There's lots of HR and recruitment people that work in these organisations. It doesn't necessarily mean all of them have a relationship with Northcoders or even know what the business is, right? Just because, for example, there isn't, let's say a Moonpig role in the Northcoders job board, it doesn't mean it isn't worth going out, connecting with people that work at Moonpig, having a look at their corporate site, seeing what roles they've got live on their board. But yeah, any role that a Northcoders hiring partner comes to us with, we will put on that board and we'll manage you through that process. So we will send your profiles across, we'll chase feedback, we'll schedule and organise tech tests with you. You'll get some support on these tech tests with us, and we'll chase things like feedback, offers, all that sort of stuff for you. Cool. Does anyone have any more questions before we wrap up? Like I said, obviously I'm always available on Slack. Happy to obviously answer any more questions that might come up after the session on there as well. And you'll also be doing more sessions with us as well. So we'll be doing a CV workshop. When you move into project phase, we'll be talking about writing a great developer CV, a really strong portfolio to back that up, to showcasing your work as a developer, and how to, I suppose, put your best foot forward when you do apply for developer roles. When are careers meetings? Cool. So like I said, there's that. After we've done the CV workshop and you've written up first drafts of those CVs, we will schedule in one-to-ones with you where we will give you some more tailored and personalised career advice and get to know you a little bit better. And then once we receive that draft back of your CV as well, we'll give you access to that job board. Idea is everyone that has access to the board is job ready, so they have portfolio pieces on there. Their CV is a good representation of them and the work that they're capable of doing, and they can go straight across to roles. So it keeps the process, like I was saying before, quick for everyone. It means we aren't waiting on people to finish bits and pieces, and it just results in a better experience for everyone. Cool. When the next workshop's happening? First week of project phase is the CV workshop. After that, either myself or Lucy will be in touch to schedule in one-to-ones with you. We'll fit that around your projects, and it will. We'll do other little feedback things for you as well. So let you know how you can improve your CV, lay it out a little bit better. Just simple things like obviously making sure that your GitHub profile's on there, full URLs are on there so people can copy and paste bits and pieces from that as well to have a look at your work. And we'll continue working with you after the bootcamp as well until you get that all important first developer role. Cool. All right, everyone. So we're running a little bit over. So I'm going to have to jump. But like I said, if people do have questions, don't hesitate to drop me a message and get in touch. I hope that was really informative and useful for everyone. I encourage you, as I mentioned before, to go out and do some research, not just on these companies, but just the wider industry in your area as well. And start reaching out to the community, not just on LinkedIn, but like I said, have a look on Meetup, Eventbrite. A lot of these meetups that were going on before have now gone online, so it's well worth watching some of these things, seeing who some of the authorities and people of expertise in the industry are within certain technologies or frameworks, and start building up your understanding of the industry so you can really understand the type of role you want to go across to afterwards. Cool. Thank you for joining me, everyone. I'll see you soon. Okay. Cheers. Bye.